And I was looking at the impact space and I was like, okay, well, this is just a better paradigm for our economy, for our society, for how we live with each other. What am I going to do to help grow this? Right? That was my question. How do we bring the value of nature into our global economic system, our financial markets, everything that I see in this space? Because we've been hosting summits on nature investing. We've been hosting all kinds of gatherings. We've been in lots of discussions. I've really doubled down on this topic because perhaps a good way to look at it is what we call root cause, impact root cause investing, because that addresses, you're talking about this mainstream negativity and like how the focus then shapes like things that are being talked more about and giving more attention about, that's probably completely unnecessary, right?
Welcome back to Catalyst Talks podcast, everybody. Thank you for your time and attention. And remember to please look for that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. If you find any value here today, drop a comment in, put your questions in for me or for Alessa, and join the conversation. I am so excited to be joined by you today, Alessa Berg. For the folks who don't know who you are, your bio and all your links will be in the show notes. A brief introduction. You were born in Switzerland. I was always wondering where your accent was from, and you are fluent in 6 languages. Wow. Former background in big private equity firms, and you are an entrepreneur at heart. This is our first time meeting, and what I've been witnessing is that you are so focused on solutions. You are so focused on, okay, this and what can we do about it? And so this is going to be such a juicy conversation we have today. You are the founder and CEO of a massive global network of investors and problem solvers. So as the CEO and founder of Top Tier Impact, a global ecosystem of impact investors, LPs, entrepreneurs, professionals, and public figures across more than 50 countries. Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. You are ubiquitous in the space of impact and reimagining finance and regenerative everything. Congratulations on your recent Amazon Prime TV series about impact entrepreneurship called Road to Utopia. Everyone check that out. I want to start off with giving our audience an idea of who you are beyond all those words, who you are, what you're passionate about, and what is top of mind for you at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very excited to be here as well and explore these topics together, starting perhaps with the solution part you pointed out, because I feel very seen in you bringing it up. It's such a strong culture pillar of top tier impact and of the values that our members across 50 countries all share with each other and all perhaps even get attracted to. Because you see, when I 5, 6 years ago observed the impact space and understood I was coming from a background in both investing and entrepreneurship, but without being under this impact umbrella. And I was looking at the impact space and I was like, okay, well, this is just a better paradigm for our economy, for our society, for how we live with each other. What am I going to do to help grow this? Right? That was my question. And what I observed that perhaps is very much embedded in me is how much more we could focus proactively on solutions. And so we always say we are solution focused and action driven. Because I think that ultimately, if you have this mission of growing a positive movement like the impact movement, that is the force that carries us. And so, I think that maybe this is a good place to start answering your question because I've always been interested in this. I remember being a little child and like staring at abstract paintings, thinking about like some philosophies that I didn't really know to be, let's say, Buddhist, for instance, but like, and really thinking from an early age how I really wanted to understand how our world works. Again, this is like innocent, clueless kid, right? That's like, I really want to understand how we interact with each other as humans, how we do things, so I can help improve it. So like that was always such a driver for me that got me early on interested in economics and then governance design, system design, coupled with being very entrepreneurial.
So when you were looking at how can I solve this, were you seeing problems or were you only seeing how can I solve this?
Okay. when I was looking at that, and I could tell you some of the thinkers that I came across, especially again, if we're talking about 5, 6 years ago before I created Top Tier Impact, I was seeing problem experts everywhere. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I learned from them. I really need to acknowledge I learned from it, right? Like they got me in, they helped me reflect, structure my thinking around all of these things. But I was like, and I remember asking one of them, I was like, well, what about the solutions?
Mm.
He kind of like looked at me and was like, oh, maybe that's for you to figure out. Because clearly, like in me, there was this restlessness about guys, like everybody's talking about the problems. So I would say, to answer your question, I do come from, I would say, a good understanding of the problems because that's not the problem. There's so much good
Mhm.
understanding of the problems out there. There are so many problem experts, and some are incredible in the work they do and in the way they're able to articulate their thoughts. And yet, I didn't see the equivalent for solutions.
Mm. You know what I love about what really dragged me, I was like, what's the dive in portal for us? I looked at the mission statement for Top Tier Impact, where your mission is to accelerate the mainstream adoption of impact and sustainability. And 2016, I was writing a book. I have never published this book. It was like, I was already on to the next thing. That's kind of how my mind works. It was about the sustainability mindset shift. And this was in 2016. I was like, oh my gosh, finally, something called the SDGs. Forget about all of what is behind that. But it was, oh my gosh, as an environmental activist for so many years, I see, okay, something's happening. This is in corporate. I better jump in there. And then I was really dissecting what I was seeing was, and I was calling it the mainstream effect. So when we bring in sustainability, as we bring in and mainstream these earthbound consciousness centric realities, there's something that happens when they're mainstreamed. And so let's talk about that mainstream effect and how, for me, what I do and what I love about this is I'm feeling my edges of, wow, where am I focused on problems? And so I'm always looking at what is the potential problem from a solution. So how do we assess the unintended consequences of our potential, noble solutions by really addressing what the unintended consequences are of mainstreaming?
Absolutely. And that gets us to a term I want to bring up here, which a friend taught me some years ago. He calls it the next asshole theory,
The next,
which
next
is basically, you're very familiar with it, right? And it's this idea of, yeah, we want to solve, and then eventually we go mainstream and we're the next problem. And so what you just pointed out, I think is so essential all the time, like all the way through, right? This
Yeah.
thinking of, but what are the possible problems with this solution? And not only that, I will add another big dimension here that we can go into, but where am I coming from? Where am I truly,
Yes.
truly coming from, right? Because without having to go down that other rabbit hole, this solution focused approach in past centuries has also meant ways of going, to other parts of the world that we cannot possibly understand, thinking we know better and we have solutions to
Hmm.
bring, right? Um, and again, it's always dependent on the consciousness and the intentions that we come from, because that can be the most beautiful thing and that can
Yeah.
be a truly destructive thing, right? The whole spectrum is possible, like with
Yeah.
most things. And so for us to really hold ourselves accountable and be raw and as honest as we can with ourselves of where am I truly coming from? What's
Hmm.
the sprout, right? Like what is the fire that's coming here? And that, for me on my own path, that is one of the tools or the weapons of inner development that's key, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's like, how can I develop my way of showing up from a true place of care, from a place that doesn't embed whatever fears I might have individually
Yeah.
or in the collective, or might just be blind spots. That is a continuous exploration.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So many movements or so many actions are fueled by despair and the problems. And I'll sometimes open LinkedIn and be like, oh, shut it. Because it's just so much negativity and the energetics, the frequency in the stories that we're spelling into the field are as important, I believe, as the actions, right?
Mm.
We're inoculating. we're inoculating minds in this mainstream effect, so how do we want people to adopt regenerative finance or regenerative concepts? And if we're constantly embedding it in a story of despair and negative doom, well, then that's the mainstream effect, right? How do you see this? I mean, you do so much work with entrepreneurs who are creating solutions. You are an entrepreneur creating solutions. How do you see this topic? Does this show up in conversations? Are people asking these questions? How do we avoid or solve for in advance potential unintended
Mm.
consequences?
Unintended consequences. I think that perhaps a good way to look at it is what we call root cause,
Mm,
impact root cause investing, because
yeah.
that addresses, you're talking about this mainstream negativity and like how the focus then shapes like things that are being talked more about and giving more attention about. That's probably completely unnecessary, right? It's
Mm,
just a fabrication. And on the root cause side of things, I think that what I have witnessed in the past 5, 6 years with a global community that was global from day one, so really different mindsets, cultures, perspectives, like
mm,
angles of coming into all this, is that the topic of mental health, inner development, consciousness has become so much more
yeah.
understood, but also decharged, because it used to be quite charged, right? It used to be a little bit of like fear of vulnerability and associations and whatever. And I have had, because, for me, when it comes to this topic, mostly I believe in just sharing as an example rather than giving advice. It's very
Hmm.
delicate to give advice. And again, it's easy to come from a place of, oh, I'm right. Well, I know now, I've got this angle of the perspective that I didn't have before and you may not have, and all of
Yeah.
that, right? So rather than doing that, just sharing. And what I have seen is like so many incredible cases of like even some really cynical investors being completely transformed and telling me that now, because saying like that was the seed for them to hear
Mm,
about it from me, to start approaching it themselves, and now converting others, spreading something good. Um, so, I guess that I see it as it's out there, it's okay. How can we
mm,
go about it? I think that avoiding this next asshole effect of like, well, I know better, let me tell you what it should be instead, but just sharing from an honest place can go a long
mm.
way.
So when I received, I kind of want to bring in this email, the way that I reached out and said, "Hey, let's have a conversation on the podcast." I was like, "Oh my God, how could this link be here?" And I went into a whole spiel. And so, for some context, I saw this email. You sent an email on regenerative. I think it was regenerative ag, and there was just a link of like things to know what's going on in the field. Right? It's probably just like a new. Here are some things going on in the news, very benign. And I wrote and was like, oh my gosh, do you know what Bayer's doing? And so it's interesting. And I bring this up because it's always a delicate balance for me, of this question about solutions and also like stopping harm. And we know, like in the ABCs of impact investing, right? There's avoiding harm,
Mm,
benefiting stakeholders, contributing to solutions. How can does contributing to solutions also include that awareness? It's not necessarily stopping harm, because that's not the energy, right? It's in the
yeah.
contributing to solutions, the information, without it being like negative, without it being they're doing this and oh my gosh, but just the information about the consciousness of the unintended consequences. So, for example, I'll just use this as a benign example. Bayer was bought Monsanto. Monsanto in the 80s, 90s was responsible for colonizing seeds around the world, causing so many deaths of farmers in India and all across this world, including in the US, and literally colonizing an entire system of soil, seed, and farmer and food, basically. And so now they come in with a solution and it
Mm,
looks good. And so how do we discern, is it good? What is there an agenda? How do we do that? By coming from a positive place, not looking for problems, but
mm.
also seeing the isness.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, great question, because I think there's a big sense-making component that we do together and collectively
Yeah.
on the last part of what you said. So if you take this case, Bayer coming out with this initiative that looks as a solution, I was as surprised when I came across it I would go as far as actually saying that, I mean, this is a big, big rabbit hole, but in my opinion, even before the 80s and 90s, these movement of mass industrialization of food production,
Yeah.
reducing diversity and reducing like the natural resilience of the ecosystems that this comes from, has been the driving force of, oh, okay, well, overpopulation, but on what basis? On an unhealthy basis that depletes not just our souls, but our human systems, because human health and soul health are mirrors of each other. And even how they work as a system is very, very similar, right? But without going into the complicated details of that, it's just obvious
Yeah.
because we put that in our body. And today, an apple has, in my understanding, something like compared to 20 years ago, something like 3, 4 times less nutrition, right? Like this is what we're dealing with. And in some places that's worse. And especially when there's no education or it's just not affordable because it
Yeah.
typically isn't, right? Because we have disintermediated our supply chains. Another, in my opinion, massive issue, these global supply chains. When, I went to the Amazon last summer, and as we were flying on this little plane over the forest, my mind just like automatically goes into like, okay, how did we get here? Because I see that fire, but I also see a lot of small scale farms. And really, like what all of that has been driven by is because there is foreign demand from global markets and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into
Mm.
demonizing this, of course not. Yet,
Yeah.
it's just important to acknowledge and collectively be in this sense making process that I mentioned of, okay, that's acknowledged, that's decharged, that's understood. Now what? Back to the
Yeah.
problem solution.
Yeah.
And so even in this example of that link about one of the real core problem drivers and contributors now coming up with this solution, there was in me this kind of like surprise bulb of, okay,
Mm.
interesting. And you know what? Now that we're bringing it back up here, maybe that was just also to hear from you and hear your perspective and be in this discussion so
Yeah.
that we kind of like integrate and process it in a way that, we're not necessarily able to just do on our own.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting hearing because you just unlocked a perspective in me. I'm like, oh, what am I actually doing? Am I actually seeing a problem when I see Bayer, who buys the company that is one of the root causes of the solutions that we're working on? And then Bayer is a pharmaceutical company. So they are the solution to the disease that is caused by the company, the problem that they bought. And so here comes this solution. So the link was to what I think it was, Bayer was creating a educational platform for smallholder farmers in, I think, in Africa and South, Latin America, was it? In developing nations, and which I don't love the word. And they were creating some kind of data collection process, which was going to help educate the farmers, which actually really requires is removing what they took away, you know. But this solution was in I think it was in partnership with an intergovernmental agency. And so I looked at it and immediately I see, oh, this is what they do. They create problems. And this is not creating a villain. This isn't creating a villain. This is like super not charged. Oh, how smart. Okay. They're creating a solution so that the next problem that comes, they'll have a solution for that. Be the data keepers so that because we know we're moving into the next challenge, it's going to be solution's going to be data. And then
Yeah,
they'll have it. That's
yeah.
where my mind went. I was like, okay, what would that look like having that kind of template in the decision making process or the solution making process that can leapfrog like four problem solutions into the future
Mm.
and create the solution from out there?
Yes, yes. There is something, I love how you're just explaining as in, okay, objectively, I see that because I feel right now something slightly creepy as well about like those few steps ahead type of situation, at least considering where it's coming from.
Mm.
But yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So where do you see? Okay, so this is the work. This is what you do every day. What is like a project that you're focusing on right now? And how are you going about
Mhm.
answering hard questions?
Mhm. Look, what's got my focus in just an inescapable way right now is this question around how do we bring the value of nature into our global economic system, our financial markets, everything that I see in this space, because we've been hosting summits on nature investing, we've been hosting all kinds of gatherings, we've been in lots of discussions. I've really doubled down on this topic because it feels so fundamental. It
Yeah.
feels really systemic. It's like the biggest market failure of our times that we've given nature a value of zero. And by the way, I would love to live in a world where our consciousness is way beyond, oh, okay, we have to give nature a value. Well, how much is
Yeah.
this sunset worth? Like, fair enough, it should be infinitely worth. Unfortunately, not only we're not there, but we are in a place where this value of zero has translated into all these big climate
Yeah.
problems we talk about, pollution, like resource overconsumption, all of that, right? Like you can also link it to the regenerative space, soils, and the state of our waters. So all of that to me is like, we've got to figure this out. Okay. And
Mm.
so I cannot not think about it. And this is really important for me as a driver because with top tier impact, when I created it, I didn't think it was going to be my next company. I just couldn't not think about how am I going to help take impact as a movement more into the mainstream and grow it positively. Like it
Mm.
just felt too important, and it's the same with this.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Your attention means the world to me. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share or subscribe. Click the button. There's a red button somewhere on this page. Subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. Take a moment to review the show, comment on this episode. Your engagement, your attention means the world to us, and it really helps us spread these important messages and enables us to continue to put this amazing content out in the world. So thank you for being part of this conversation. Your attention means the world to me. And now, back to this episode.
And so when it comes to this topic, quite frankly, what I've done in the last 12, 18 months, probably 18 months at this point, has been really listening and reconciling lots of different perspectives. Whether it's the large insurer that's like,
Mhm.
okay, there's a repricing coming, we can't cover these verticals in farming anymore, no, no, no. Whether it's the local leader, indigenous, or a simple community or a farmer, right? And their perspective on like, hey, everything is so much more unpredictable. The link to their income is too. And by the way, don't get me started on why the margins are so low on that side for small scale farmers. It's partially also because of this issue of we haven't priced nature's value, right? And so
Mm.
everything gets eroded in there. And then you need to end up relying on subsidies for all kinds of things and so on and so forth. So this question for me has been top of mind really strongly. And, this, again, sense making of listening to
Mm.
various perspectives while thinking through solutions has been a big process.
Mm. What are you finding like any lights where it's like, okay, let's follow? Are you finding openings?
Yes.
Curious.
So, a couple of things. One of the, so to say, conclusions, but really, let's say, points of, okay, let's take this into account as a core part of it is whatever we come up with, because I've seen a lot of smart new structures, instruments, funds realigning incentives with, collective deliver, impact deliver in a certain way. And all of that is great. And yet it's going against the current and it's having to push hard because the rules of the game it plays within, the rules of the system and the economic platform it's on, they're not about that really.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, I've reached the conclusion that creating a new structure, and it doesn't need to be, oh, okay, well, sorry, now we're throwing away like everything and all these markets and
Mhm.
that, but creating new markets
Yeah.
and new
Yeah.
platforms where the rules are different.
Hmm.
That has been one of the insights, and I've been percolating with that.
Yes.
Um, and another is frankly these, because it's a complex collective issue, is about these coordination. That's partially why I've been listening to so many different opinions and bringing rooms together where we would have all these people, right? Like from the investor to the biologist and everybody in between, because these will require something that really feels good for all kinds of, like, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about diluting it, right?
Hmm.
But it's really like having those aha moments, because I genuinely believe, just like nature works with these efficiency and nature develops as an ecosystem, it doesn't develop as individual species, right? We got that
Right.
wrong with Darwin, by the way, saying, well, as a species, we do this and that. No, as a species in balance with certain ecosystems, we develop in a certain way, right? And so when you sort of see the parallel with that thinking here right now, it's like, well, what's best for the ecosystem? Because what's
Yeah.
eventually, like, once it's worked out, then it's easy, and then you can, move it ahead. So
Mhm.
having a, call it, multi-stakeholder buy-in, but that's also not, like this complex progress of process, sorry, of negotiation and different opinions, like
Yeah.
trying to make it come from a place that feels good.
Mm, I love that. So far, I'm curious what you're seeing. If I can sort of get the cliff notes on your, do you know what cliff notes are? So, okay. Oh, when I grew up, there were cliff notes. Oh, this is so funny that this is coming in. Cliff notes were the short version, which is now probably an AI chat GPT summary of a book. But
Mm.
I'd love to know the what's rising around net zero. I have a really strong disconnect, more than disconnect. Like it's just something in me says, no, this is problem, and we kind of see it. It seemed like an answer to me. It's a problem that's going to need another solution. Yeah, speak to that.
Yeah, it's so funny because the second you say this to me doesn't resonate, you sort of unlocked for me the fact that, yeah, I've never resonated with this term. It's so much resistance, and I haven't even been that aware of it. It's just been like,
Wow.
yeah, if we need to call it like energy transition and geopolitics as a panel versus net zero, blah, 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 we're always going to go for the other option, It's just been like a skating around it a little bit. I'm realizing.
You know why though? Because if you actually look at the word and like well, I'm not telling you this. My sense is that it's just like it's like a smoke and mirrors word. It's not net zero. It's selling carbon credits or buying biodiversity credits. It's not, it's an arbitrary linear mathematical equation that's actually not, it's not holistic.
It's not only it's that, but also it's unexciting, negative, and just like bureaucratic in its weight. And again, without going into the whole, oh, do we need to, there's, for example, on the whole word of climate change and then the context of it, there's quite a few people saying, well, even just this terminology, it's so
True.
abstract and people can't, without even getting into that, right? Because in my experience, often it's not that this thing happens because there's a top-down evil strategy executed perfectly and it's actually just like, yeah, coming from an uninspiring place and try, with so many adjustments to, try to retrofit it to whatever, so that it ends up being something that carries a connotation that's heavy and tough to get on board with, I would say. Because, yeah, think about it, right? The context, you can reframe that in a much more action focused, positive way of the next paradigm you get to and the benefits that will be unlocked there, right?
Yeah.
Because, for example, like drawing a different parallel, but in a similar way, in regeneration, you can be like, well, because, otherwise, like, no, all these horrible things. Or, all right, guys, first of all, there's already plenty of case studies that show that this is more efficient and there's a better yield for farmers, for investors, for everybody, right? So, like, we don't need to, whether you do it from your heart or from your wallet, it does make sense. So that's cool, So there's no space for going more into that, but it just becomes a burden. And I think that, unfortunately, without that being the intention, a lot of the regulation in climate, in corporate sustainability has gone down that direction.
Yeah, that it's really interesting to me because the etymology, the nature of the word, there's so much power in the word. And we every time we're saying it, we're spelling it into being. I firmly believe this. And right, we're frequencies and our words are having an effect. So climate change is so scary when you hear that, right? I was an environmentalist. I was a tree sitter. Like,
Mhm.
and I became a lawyer doing environmental justice. That made sense. But when it became climate justice, I had to really I couldn't seem to wrap my head around it. I said, where did these words come from? And if we search, there's actually cadres of people in advertising that were brought together to come up with words. And the same thing is happening. And the narrative shift is somewhat of a psychological, whether or not you think it's top down or wherever it comes from, it's some kind of sociological psychological operation because the same thing happening with extraterrestrials and our relationship with extraterrestrials and now they have a new name and UAP and what is even that and NIC and non-human intelligence. It was like one thing before and now we have all it's confusion, right? And then it's like, oh, it's so much and we don't know how to connect to it.
Yes, 100%. I mean, now you're really sending me into a deeper reflection on zero specifically because I'm like, net zero? Wait, like net and zero, that's just so bad.
Yeah.
Wants
Game
that.
over.
I don't want it. Yeah, exactly. Game over. Yeah.
Yeah. And wow, and then we feel good contributing to net zero. It's like, oh, feel good. You're buying credits, you're doing something good, you're contributing to net zero. And it's
Checking the
because
box.
so what would
But
it
it's like,
take?
but so here, okay, so
Yeah.
here's the distinction, right? Yes, you feel good, but from where? You feel good more from a, oh, I've done my duty, I've checked my box, not from a, oh, this is meaningful, let's go, not something that takes you, right? That inspires you. And by the way, this I think is like a massive problem we have right now in the world. Like, where is the vision, right?
Mm,
Like the vision from so-called
yeah.
leaders, like to drive us in directions where we can really get behind with our hearts and minds. Like it's just the opposite in a way right now.
Yeah, so you're one of those leaders and you're and you are present in a lot of spaces. People are listening to you. And so have you ever compromised? Have you ever felt yourself compromised to adjust to sometimes there's the differentiator of am I self-censoring or the discernment I should probably discern and choose to use certain words and sometimes there's that self-censoring so that you don't lose credibility or something like that. Do you ever find that in your journey?
It's so funny because as you mentioned this and I reflect about it, I'm like, hold on. I think what I've experienced is more that sometimes I've had these very strong vocal kind of push, that would come from me that would almost be a bit, not the opposite of self-censoring, but really just like whatever this needs to be said, and that's good. But at the same time, there is something to say about, once again, where it's coming from.
Mm,
Because you would often, if you feel like a fire of like, this is just, we've got to address it, it's not okay. And what I've seen in my journey, in a way, is more incorporating a certain compassion so that multiple perspectives can be acknowledged and understood and seen.
mm,
So that's been, I would say, and I could go back to the question, but as you were sharing it, that's what came up for me. It's more
mm,
this developing my perception and my ability to hold compassion and understand so that we can really move forward. And it's not even if I think it comes from a pure place, because I'm like, oh my goodness, this needs to be said and pointed out and what's going on. It goes beyond that.
mm. So you're meeting people where they are so that
Yeah.
to give them a bridge to create that
And
bridge.
and 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 again, not necessarily from, oh, because like what, it's really more just so that, we all want the same things. Like let's
Yeah.
understand each other. We really do.
Yeah, and helping people see that. I'm really on this observer journey, and I'm curious how this lands because I've kind of seen your journey in this impact investing world, impact space, and also beyond, like in the realms of consciousness and earth, because obviously, like, let's be real, impact investing happens, it doesn't always happen on earth. And I love that you bring that element. So what I want to bring up is this consciousness, this observer I'm noticing that I dance with, and it's like this cosmopomorphic view. We talk about ecopomorphic, if I'm even saying that right, though the anthropomorphic, I'm always saying, what is the cosmo view? What is the eco view? And how anthropomorphic, or do you know what I'm saying? Like how so many decisions we make, even when we think we're
Yeah.
actually not, it is
Yeah.
so centered on the human. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, okay. Good news and bad news.
Yeah.
So it's kind of both at once, I would say, from my perspective at least, is that it's a never-ending journey because it's like a spiral. That's really how I keep on over and over seeing it. It's a spiral, and then you get to a point where you're like, whoa, 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 okay, now I have this whole new perspective. Then you integrate it, and then suddenly you move to another level. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So because I've been through that several times, I've grown to just see it as this constant, and I tell you what, this verticality I think is so powerful because this infinite verticality sits, in my opinion, in so many concepts that are deeply true and resonate so much, like Rumi poetry, right? Like, I don't know if you are familiar with
Mm.
Rumi as a poet and what he put, but like I find that, or for example, for me, a lot of the Buddhist philosophies that deeply resonate, Taoist philosophies as well. I love the Tao Te Ching. There's this depth of truth, and you can read it a million times. You can literally reread it constantly and find more and find more and find more. And I think that is a feature, a hallmark of when you have that intense, infinitely vertical truth where you can always learn more. You can always find another way to perceive it and see it. And so I think that, this path you mentioned with the observer and, being able to discern, like, where am I coming from? Good news is that it evolves, but like,
Yeah.
mixed news is that just keep going.
Keeps going. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a great way to bring in the idea of it's not even an idea, the reality of our multidimensionality. Each of one of those verticals, or whatever it is, whatever angle we're going, we are such multidimensional beings, and all these problem solutions, if we're creating them all within this dimension, it's this linear dimension. Well, it's going to have an unintended consequence, because I mean, I don't know. Well, I hear you're saying this is happening for you right now. Things are speeding up on this planet. Consciousness is just like every day we're evolving so much more rapidly. And what is it? How do we get in front of that? So let me ask you this question. I now self-proclaimed conscious futurist because I feel that there are a lot of futurists, and I've grown up. I'm like, I'm always in the future. I always see the future. Maybe I should be a futurist. And I listen, and I understand there's a lot more of a discipline to the, studying trends and the science of futurists, or whatever that title even is. And I actually disagree with a lot of futurists. I think that
Mhm.
there's a lot of people who are considered the futurists, and then they're spelling some future that I disagree with, and I don't think it is the way. So how do you dance with that?
Yeah. Okay. A couple of things. One comment specifically on some of like these specific futurist theories out there,
Yeah.
and then just more in general. I do think that I'm no expert, but what I've observed on the futurists that are out there, it's often like a specific perspective, and every perspective is limited. It tends to be these like male, more rational,
Yeah.
tech driven, and at least like a few of
Yeah.
the futurist theories that I've seen out there. And it really doesn't resonate with me either, for those, because it does feel very limited. It's like, okay, from your mind, logically speaking, tech and everything, and yet, even when we talk about tech, we barely understand a fraction of the
Mhm.
infinite potential of this biological hardware we deal with.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
barely do. How
Yeah.
about that? That's way more interesting to me anyway. And leveraging technology in that process, 100%. So I think that quite a few of those opinions out there tend to be skewed in a certain way, often driven by, like people who, because of that combination, really want to put it out there as well, right? And then another comment, and these ties into the philosophy of Road to Utopia, the TV series on impact that I've done. I came up with this name Road to Utopia. It just kind of came through. I was like, okay, fine. I'll do this. It'll be cool like that. And I didn't expect it. But from the first to the last person hearing the name, they'd be like, okay, Utopia, what do you mean by that? And for me, it was like, okay, what's this Utopia like? And all of that. And I was like, but it doesn't matter. And then I realized that for me, this idea of utopia was always bottom up, and always coming from, if people are empowered, if we empower more and more people to align and have the courage of aligning with what comes natural, what's in purpose,
Mm.
what's easy, and it's tough to get to what's easy, right? Because there's been so many layers put on that, collective, individually, like everywhere, left, right, and center. So there's this process of getting to that and like helping people. That's why the TV series covers 8 areas of impact. For our outer worlds, like regenerative communities, alternative education, fusion energy, and 4 others are inner worlds, so breath work,
Mm.
development, longevity. So it's really this bottom up utopia, where I believe that if more and more of us can be empowered to follow what that definition of utopia means to us, uniquely to us, then the bottom up utopia created, like, I trust that
Yeah,
100 times more than whatever top down utopia anyone is going to tell me about.
that's a beautiful series. Congratulations. Did you read the book, Utopia, Thomas More?
No.
Did you know there was a book?
Mm-mm.
It's like an old classic book, Thomas More,
All
Utopia.
right.
Yeah, that's a good one to read. There are so many ideas that we're not listening to right now. And so I'm always saying, what are we not listening to now that in 30 years, not 100 years, but like in 30 years, we're going to wish we listened to? And I was saying that because, and I've said that for a long time because I have, remember it in the 1990s, being an activist in the ancient redwoods and the ancient forests and like traveling around, working with different forest protection, working on different campaigns for protecting forests, ancient forests. I was like, we cannot cut ancient forests. Like there's no getting them back. There's an intelligence here. There is
Right.
information, something that can last for thousands of years has information about how to do that, And I was like a crazy person. So okay, maybe it's my delivery. And so that's what I worked on over the last however many years. And in my practice, I actually I teach classes and courses and train folks on how to become a conscious futurist and really hold it, because this is like us claiming our future. How do we tap into the future and say, tell us what's there, because we can live into that. And because from here we might not know. So I always am looking for people who are speaking about things or having some perspective that's being a little marginalized or pushed aside or called names or whatever it is, and saying, like, what are they saying? Because what did we not listen to 30, 40, 50 years ago that we wish we listened to now?
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that, the answer to that is not gonna come from us here. It's just gonna come from us going and having all those conversations. And I will add that I think today, more than ever before, we have access to this endless information, right? So in a way, part of how things are getting faster and faster is that we have more to incorporate to the extent we possibly can, right? Because the saturation point, like, we know how that's like, right? We don't want that either. And one thing that comes up here as you're speaking about it, for me, has been this reflection of, how from generation to generation, so multi-generational discussions as well being key, because we get
Mm,
less and less exposure to different generations. Like, it used to be
it's
common
true.
to be
It's true.
surrounded by that, and we don't now. And for myself specifically, you know, being in my 30s and wondering, okay, well, this new generation, I hear some friends of mine saying, oh, yeah, they're like this and that and so on. And I'm like, I refuse to
Yeah.
ever be that person because it's always been the case. We've heard that as kids, right? Like some older people complaining, oh, this generation, blah, blah, blah. It's always the case. And it's going to keep increasing in a way because it's like also this increase in speed, right? And so
Mm,
instead, I've been asking myself, when people point out, oh, yeah, the level of saturation and their nervous system and all the information, and they grow up with this and na. And I try to step back from that, not to be naive either, that those are issues, right? But to step back and be like, okay, and what else? What might be coming from this adjustment? Because we adjust as humans, like we're infinitely capable of adjustment. What might be coming from this adjustment that are new, unexpected,
mm.
impossible to previously imagine skills and ways of seeing the world, right? So I'm trying to ask that to myself and try to observe it where I can.
Hey everyone, I wanted to take a pause here and invite you to go just a little bit deeper. We put a lot of podcast episodes out that are super, super stimulating and thought provoking, especially the one you're listening to right now. And there's an invitation to go just a little bit deeper and do some of the inner work, do some of the inner tweakings to get you to the next step. So if you are somebody who is feeling like the old identities no longer serve you, they don't fit who you know you are, they don't fit who you are becoming, and you're kind of like, well, how do you take that leap? I want to invite you to a free on-demand masterclass that is called Liberation, Owning Your Power. Owning your power as a creator. We are in the most epic moment of transformation, a pivotal portal in the world. And we need visionary leaders like you to step in, reclaim your power, know your enoughness, and get clarity, super, super clear on your purpose. What is yours to do right now? How are you going to do it? And what support do you need to get there? So if you are looking for some guidance, a pause, a timeout, a guided visualization, a guided workbook journey that's going to take you through this beautiful exercise, a step-by-step proven framework that will literally shift your perception of who you think you are and who you're supposed to be, and give you the tools to step into your power and own your rightful place as a creator, the creator of your life, your experience, and our new world. So if this is speaking to you, just take a moment and go to Stephanie-Trager.com, Stephanie-Trager.com. Remember the little dash on the inside, and you can sign up for this free on-demand masterclass right now called Liberation, Owning Your Power as a Creator. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. And now back to this episode. Wow, it sounds like you're doing it more than trying. I actually love that you brought that in, because it expanded my mind in, it's really just the change. It's each generation is changing the other generation, and anyone who's saying, "Oh, that generation is resisting change," instead of how you're asking this question. Oh wow, how is this beneficial? How is this improving? So do you see in your community that it is multi-generational and that there are these like productive conversations that way?
Mhm. It partially is, it could be much more. We try,
Mm,
but the reality is that majority is people in their 30s and 40s. Then probably the second one is like 50s and 60s. And then you've got 20s. And then you've got, and I love seeing when you've got someone super young and super driven who reaches out. And it's just like, ah,
mm,
yes, please. That's what I would have wanted as well, as I remembering when I was younger and I was trying to figure so many things out and I didn't even know where to start and where to go.
mm.
Of course, being able to be that place is phenomenal. So once in a while, we have this like amazing young person who reaches out and it's like the perfect contribution.
Mm. So where were you what was your journey to figuring it out or making the leap to like, I'm gonna do what I'm here to do?
We're always figuring it out, right? But I guess it's really just been it's been various chapters, maybe, I came from the way I grew up was definitely not like, oh, go figure out what you like. And, it was kind of the opposite of that. And it made me suffer a lot because I felt, what I wanted, what I was interested in, what I cared about. And it was not available, and it means then this journey of also healing what you then end up perceiving as limitation, self-betrayal, like all of that.
Hmm.
So Yeah, it wasn't, but you know, these things always have two sides, right? Because I think that probably created like the resilience of breaking out of it. So yeah, definitely not a conditioning of, oh, just go figure out, or, you know, listening. Like I don't have kids yet, but the idea of learning and just observing a child and like seeing this little wonder of, oh, they seem to be interested in this and that. And like to me, that seems super exciting. And yet, past generations, like it's often just not been the case at all, right? For various understandable fear-driven reasons. So it's been a journey of so many chapters. And I think that, you know, the chapter of 5, 6 years ago with Top Tier Impact, again, the fact that I was for a long time, I didn't think it was going to be my next company, but I was just like, ah, like this is, you know, I've got to contribute. I've got to figure something out and help and provide something. I think that's always something good to follow. So it's almost like observing yourself where you naturally go that you may really not assume, you know, it might be something silly or just the way you lead conversations and what you're interested in and all of that. It's like, it's again where that observer you mentioned before comes in, and we keep
Hmm.
observing and learning, right? Like often I feel that I'm just like, there's a part of me that is just a steward of this being, you know, trying to help her like figure things out and figure herself out and whatever else. Um, so yeah, it's just a continuous learning journey.
And have you ever been held back by fear?
Oh, I'm sure countless times, you know, and you know, if I stop and think about it, um, yes, like in, you know, I think whether we like it or not, I can give you a lot of examples like earlier, right? Like I can give you a lot of like, oh, that and that and that and that. Um, Less now, and yet I think it's probably just something visceral that we don't even realize that happens all the time, right? Like it
Hmm.
just happens whether we know it or not. It just happens like in little things. Like you can imagine like that little cute interaction where there's some kind of like, I don't know, oh, saying this thing or not saying, I don't know, you
Yeah.
know, there's just so many little nuances of it.
Hmm.
And then there's the bigger ones. I think that again, for me, the bigger ones were earlier in my story, they were the ones where I wasn't allowed to go in the directions I wanted to go, you know, and it just made me suffer and made me confused. And that creates like a certain environment. So those are probably like the ones where I can think it was like a bigger process. But one way or the other, it happens in the little things. And perhaps this process of gaining more awareness as we observe is to be able to notice it in the smaller
Yeah.
moments, right? And like, and then you catch the smaller moments and it doesn't become a bigger thing.
Mm. Yeah. Well, you moved through it earlier in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. So all right, I'm gonna bring in a little imaginative. Imagine if you woke up one day and realized that the key, like the key, the answer to all of it was, in fact, something completely different than you thought, in a completely different direction. And this new key that you are given unlocks everything. What is it? What is it? What's the key?
What's the key?
What's the
Oof.
key?
Okay. Oh, I feel that's kind of simple. I think the key is the ability of holding like just infinite amounts of love in how we
Mm,
perceive reality and
yeah.
how we show up. And, you know, again, these like these spirals and observing and to me, it all comes down to, okay, gain awareness of the fears, put them in context, feel what needs to be felt, make more space to come from a place of love and collective care with wisdom, right? So I think that's the key. That's 100% the key.
That is so well said, with wisdom. Yeah, beautiful. And what is something that you're looking forward to right now?
What am I looking forward to? I mean, there are the immediate things, like it's a Friday, I have some fun weekend plans, and I'm going into nature, which I tend to always do on weekends. It's definitely my place to charge. Forest, the ocean. So that's, yeah, I mean, my mind goes straight to nature. I can tell you about the nature for this weekend. I can tell you about it for the summer. Yes, we also
Mm.
have at Top Tier Impact, we're doing our first nature retreat because we do
Mm.
a lot of these global gatherings and we convene and we bring different people together. But this is really going to be an immersion and very yin and yang, like we're theming it on inner and outer regeneration. And it's going to be in a place in Spain, in the south of Spain, where some friends of mine who are very active in regeneration, both building and investing, have helped regenerate a lot of that part of the country.
Steph, Steph,
Um,
Steph Van Dagen?
yes, correct.
Yes. All right, cool. Yes.
Yes. So in Catalonia, in Muga Valley, and we're gonna do just a little retreat, but really themed around okay, moving from inner to outer. So
Mm.
we have practices to ground and be there, whether it's qigong, breath work, silent walks in nature. And then thinking about system change, thinking about these topics, going on, going to the river, going to see various places. Like that's
Mm.
something that is just up my street because again, I'm going to do it in various other ways throughout the summer. So yeah, my mind goes to all the nature adventures that I'm planning at the moment.
Beautiful. Me too. Me too.
Nice.
Beautiful. I thought we would be like deep in dead for nature swaps and, vehicles and things. So I just love where we went and to all the corners we went today. And I'm so grateful. Thank you for your time. And we'll share where everyone can find you and what you're working on in the show notes. Is there anything else one last nugget that you feel that you would like to transmit to the entire universe right now?
No pressure, right?
Beyond the answer is love with a little bit of wisdom.
Exactly. Yeah, no, actually, I just want to really thank you. I enjoyed this past hour so much, and these rabbit holes we went into, I feel we could expand on each one for an hour. So, but it's been super fun. What a way to close the week.
Thank you.